then plunging him into total unconsciousness. By the time he crumpled, the two men from the back of the FedEx van had caught him. The FedEx man swept up his pen and the clipboard, then closed the door firmly. By the time he reached his van, the other pair had carried Mr. Lieberman from the house and bundled him into the back. The FedEx van drove away in no haste, and the smaller vehicle remained, its occupants scanning the street for any sign that this small act of violence might have been spotted by an inquisitive neighbour. But the only observer appeared to be a tired dog who dozed under a tree bordering 4188 and 4190. The dog opened one eye, then closed it, stretched its body lazily, and returned to sleep. Yet somebody else did see the entire drama. Across the street at 4187, the elderly couple called Lichtman took frantic action. Nobody knew the Lichtmans well. They were the kind of couple who kept themselves to themselves, and in the 2 years since they bought the house, there had been much neighbourhood talk about the good-looking young man who visited with them and stayed, sometimes for a week. Mrs. Goldfarb, who knew everything, was one of the few people who had managed to get the Lichtmans into her home for lunch, and she told other people that the Lichtmans had 7 sons and 15 grandchildren who visited all the time. Asher Lichtman was on the telephone at this very moment, talking to one of his sons, describing what had taken place, giving the license number of the FedEx van and the smaller vehicle still outside 4188. They had used 4187 as a surveillance post for 2 years. In fact, everyone was keyed up, expecting the order to snatch Lieberman any day. Now, under their very noses, the target had been grabbed, disappearing almost into thin air. After waiting for 5 minutes, the other van drove away, the figure in its passenger seat talking rapidly into a microphone. Natkowitz did his stuff with the assistance of 2 slide projectors and a large computer screen, the kind you see software manufacturers using at trade shows. They had all trooped down to one of the secure briefing areas, shielded from external directional mics and bug-proof, 40 feet below ground in the huge basement, half of which was car park, the rest being rooms like this, or debriefing facilities. The room was not unlike a movie company's screening theatre. There were no distracting pictures on the bare walls, and it was furnished with soft, comfortable chairs which were bolted to the floor. A little console of coloured telephones was built into an enlarged armrest in the seat reserved for M. Apart from Bond and Natkowitz, M and Bill Tanner were joined by the man they all referred to as the scrivener, Brian Cogger, an officer of great skill when it came to the preparation of documents, mainly passports and assorted pocket litter, which made up the outward and visible signs of many an agent's inward and spiritual cover. It was a hint that M had already made up his mind about the operation into Moscow. The scrivener's art was a dying trade, yet he was a busy man, and his presence suggested that his talents would be required. Bond wondered if they were taking precautions out of habit, or whether there was yet cause to believe the old Eastern Bloc and Soviet intelligence communities were still at it and could pose security problems. Eventually, he decided that whatever the politicians said out loud, tolling the tocsin for communism and the Cold War, the secret world would go on playing by its own rules. It was safer that way. The hearty, dilettante farmer image which Natkowitz had presented in M's office seemed to slide away once he started to brief them on the Mossad's side of things. It was like watching a snake shed its skin, but in reverse, for Bond felt the man had put on his true nature once he began. Here was the real Pete Natkowitz, able, steeped in the arcane ways and the secret language, and with his subject at his fingertips. First, he dealt with a question of identity, using large blow-ups of Joel Penderek side by side with existing pictures of SS Unterscharführer Josef Vorontsov, as he was in 1941 when he served with the Waffen-SS Special Duties Brigade. Natkowitz flicked between the 2 side-by-side photos and a copy of Vorontsov's recorded details filched from the SS files. "As you can see, the height's about right," he said, his accent changing from the drawl to a more clipped, authoritative tone. "Around 6'1" in 1941, according to the SS, and Joel Penderek about the same in 46, if US immigration is to be believed. The age is also nearly correct. Vorontsov was born January 19th, 1917, while immigration says Penderek's birthday is November 19th, 1916, which makes him a Scorpio, if anyone should be interested in that kind of thing. It also makes him a couple of months older than Vorontsov, which is okay, or as near as damn it.